All right, here we go, Big 12. 2 games on Friday. TCU, Oklahoma has Big 12 championship implications, as does the game that evening, Texas Tech at Texas. Let's start with the Frogs coming off the whipping of Baylor, Oklahoma. You're just kind of hanging around. They have the win against Texas. The loss to Kansas is what's going to get them if they don't get in. But that game early on Friday morning.
Yeah, interesting to see how healthy Dylan Gabriel is right after last week, but haven't, seen anything alarming as far as the reports go. And, being at home, I think Oklahoma with that shot to still, a sliver to be able to find their way into the Big 12 title game. I think they'll be ready to go, but, TCU does have a little bit of confidence that was lacking prior to last week, thanks to just simply getting a win, no matter how you get it, but to get it against your rival and to do it in emphatic fashion, I think has to be very encouraging for Sonny Dykes and company, because it has been a tough year after, the magical run of a season ago to have your quarterback in Josh Hoover throw for 400-plus yards. That was, I think, a great thing as well. So I feel like TCU will be coming in playing with confidence and also playing with the fact that they have to win this game to get to a bowl game. They have to beat Oklahoma. This is their last shot to get win number 6. So I think on both sides of the equation, you've got a couple of teams that ought to be fired up and foaming at the mouth to get a win. I go Oklahoma here, especially at home. I just think based on what I've seen from both teams, like TCU last week, like part of that was like, hey, great, but it's also look at who they're playing. Everybody has looked good against Baylor at this point. So, Oklahoma's had their struggles here and there, but I still think they're the better team.
No, I do. And again, there's still a reason. Anytime you play, there's a reason to go play. But Oklahoma still has that hope that they could get a rematch with perhaps Texas in the Big 12 championship game. And then the next game, talk about some drama. You had Brett Yormark in Lubbock at that luncheon and talking about how make Joey take care of Texas. UT fans reacted very sensitive to that. And, again, you have the commissioners saying to an open, hey, we want you to go down and take care of another team on their way out, both Texas and Oklahoma playing on Friday. And for Oklahoma, it could be their last Big 12 football game. For Texas Tech, it won't be. For TCU, it won't be. And for Texas, barring something like catastrophic, it could be their last Big 12 game, too, which is interesting. They play on the same game. Joey McGuire, the Big 12 starts to run through Lubbock. A lot of things here. Texas has just been really good from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, at some point that quote may come true. They're setting themselves up to make that the case in the new Big 12, just with the way the recruiting's going and being able to build a couple of solid years together. They are in a bowl game as it stands right now, so that win against UCF and coming from behind to win that and then hold UCF off was a really big deal, because if they were coming into this game with 5 wins, they probably aren't going to the postseason. I think Texas is the better team. I think they're clearly the better team. It's in Austin. I don't worry too much about an upset here. I think it would take like kind of a bad day from Texas to see the upset. But Texas Tech's going to play hard. It's going to be really interesting to see Taj Brooks against that Texas defense, knowing how stingy they are against the run. And then for Texas Tech, if Taj Brooks can't get going, or any of their other running options, how is Baron Morton able to navigate things through the air? And if you can take advantage of Texas, where can you take advantage of them? So, I think this is going to be a great little back and forth. And then, Texas Tech is a stingy little defense themselves. So I think they'll be disruptive, and they're going to play really hard and physical. And if anything, it's going to go to the final whistle. I don't know if the game will remain that close, but Texas Tech is going to play until that final whistle, knowing how big of an opportunity this is. But I think Texas, too, knows, it's all there for the taking in our hands.
Yep.
We just have to go handle our business.
It would
do
be
it
miserable
at home,
if they didn't.
Book a Big 12 title shot. And so, I think this is big for both teams, but I would imagine that Texas is going to be pretty locked in.
UT can book it and then wait to see what Oklahoma State does the next day, or Kansas State, also depending on what happened earlier in the day with Oklahoma.
Well, plus they play a playoff hope
Absolutely.
still. So
Yep.
they've got a lot of reasons to be jacked up for this. But, I know Joey and company will be geared up as well, so that'll be a lot of fun.
All right, we can blow through these pretty quickly. Ricky Thompson right around the corner. Houston and UCF, don't worry about that tweet, Garrett, because I still don't quite understand. They're going to end up with some sort of trophy about Space City. They're very proud because of NASA. Houston, we have a problem. Dana Holgerson brought that up. He goes, they don't say Orlando we have a problem. We know Cape Canaveral's a, 30, 40-minute drive from Orlando. I drive by that when I fly in to go see my brothers. Fly into Orlando, skirt that area. Craig, UCF coming off that win a couple of weeks ago when they hammered Oklahoma State, and now Houston trying to see maybe dependent if I don't know, but it seems like Dana Holgerson's back for another year.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely, but this is going to be an interesting game for both teams. I know there's still, it's kind of like the West Virginia situation where Dana Holgerson could probably, have won a couple more games and people are still going to not want him to be back just because that's, there's segments of the fan base that just don't like him. But, they've had a couple of good moments. Obviously, with a little bit of this trash talk, it makes it interesting. They can't make a bowl game, so all they can do is close out with a win. So there's the motivation. The little space rivalry as well, I think is a fun little element to this. But for UCF, you're at home. It's a familiar opponent. You got the space thing, it's kind of bubbling there. But you need a win to go to a bowl game. And to go to a bowl game after the way the season kind of got off the rails would be a really big deal for them. They're big favorites in this game. Houston's been very up or down week to week, and so I'm curious to see how they perform here on the road against the Knights. But UCF's got a lot to play for here, and I think that they're the favorite for good reason in this game.
They've won 7 of 10 against Houston in the history. Most of course, a lot of that in the American Conference. Then BYU, been a disappointing year for the Cougars. Oklahoma State, up and down. We spoke with Sam Mays earlier about this. Chance for Oklahoma State is right at their doorstep to be playing in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, and I do think, going back to UCF Houston real quick, I do think if they sort of formalize that space race and name it and all that, I think that pairs with Farmageddon really well. And then if TCU and Baylor could figure out, like, the rivalry is the thing that makes the most sense, I think that's some good marketing and kind of like, rivalries that aren't going to be nationally popular, but that are unique and cool and have their own little fit that fits those rivalries. But yeah, as for BYU, Oklahoma State, look, BYU's got a lot of work to do. They've taken some lumps this year after a nice start, but reality sort of set in there, and they've got a lot to address in the offseason. But for Oklahoma State, it's all right there in front of you. Just go win this game. You're playing for a Big 12 title, and you've got an opportunity to, get that win that you feel like you should have gotten a couple years ago when you couldn't get the ball into the end zone on the final play.
Absolutely.
So, but for BYU, as much as they struggled, they win this game. They not only get a big top 20 win and they disrupt the Big 12, but they also get into a bowl game, which, given where they've been the last few weeks, that would be a really big deal for Kalani Sitake and company. But they're big underdogs, so it'll be easier said than done, especially on the road.
TCU, BYU, and also UCF have a chance to get to that 6th win. We've discussed West Virginia with Jed Drenning. We're about to discuss Baylor with Ricky Thompson. We'll go through that game in the next segment. KU and Cincinnati. Cincinnati, of course, 3-8. Kansas with a nice run, 7-4 with Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks. Nice momentum from last year into this year. Some high hopes. They're still pretty good. They've been a fun story again.
Yeah, it's been fun, but have now taken a couple losses. Had an opportunity to play for the Big 12 title and then quickly lost their last couple of games that negated that. What's the situation at quarterback? We've seen Cole Ballard here, getting the reins because of injuries after Jason Bean had to take over for Jalen Daniels. They did get the news that Jalen Daniels is coming back. That's huge, but it would be even bigger to go 8-4. That would be really big for KU. On the road makes it a little bit more interesting. Cincinnati obviously has struggled mightily here in their opening Big 12 debut year, but they finally got their first win in Big 12 play, and to get the second one would be a really big deal. They're only slight underdogs being at home here, so that's interesting to see that, especially I guess at the Cole Ballard situation. Maybe that's playing into it. I don't know, but just 6-point dogs against what you think is a pretty superior Kansas team. But that's a game that doesn't have a lot of sizzle, but it is big for KU to try to get their 8th win in the regular season. It'd be big for Cincinnati to knock off a team like KU.
Speaking of Farmageddon, Iowa State, Kansas State, that's the night game. Saturday night, Kansas State still has, by then they'll know, a chance to win whether or not they get to play in the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State gave Texas, struggled first half, eventually UT with too many weapons. I think this could be a hell of a game, but I think Kansas State still, despite the loss a couple of weeks ago, I think they're 3 weeks ago, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, their odds for getting in the Big 12 title game is kind of slim, but there is an opportunity if things fall the right way. So you are excited about that fact that there's at least a possibility heading into this weekend, but obviously things will be cleared up by the time they take the field as the final game here. So they'll know what's what by the time this kicks off. But regardless, it is the Farmageddon rivalry. Let's not blow it up to make it too. It's not like the Big 12 canceled Oklahoma, Texas, or Bedlam, but it is a big rivalry for those schools.
They played 106 times.
I'm just saying it's not the end of the world, but I know for those fan bases. It's not the end of the world nationally or even regionally, Big 12-wise, but I know for those schools it is a big deal, and I do think it was probably a mistake to not have that continue on when you have that much of a history. So knowing what they know now, that it's not going to be an every-year thing, I think that adds a little element of spice here, but I think just in general, these two teams don't like each other. You've got that history, and you've got a couple of teams that are pretty good, and obviously a win for either one of them would be a big deal. So, yeah, I think that they'll both be geared up and ready to go and beat the snot out of each other here. So, yeah, that ought to be a lot of fun as the Big 12 nightcap. And yeah, I would say Kansas State's the better team. I think that they would, obviously should be the favorites to win this game.
They can still get to 10 wins. They beat Iowa State, whether they play in the Big 12 championship game or not. They have 9 wins if they win this weekend, and then the bowl game down the road, too.